right, good morning. We're going to go ahead and start. We are going to start today with the capstone project so that I don't forget again like I did on Friday. This document is up on Blackboard. It's been up for about a week. If you go into the course materials for Unit 1 tab, it's there. So capstone project 1, you will have 3 capstone projects, one for each unit. They're each worth 100 points. And like I mentioned the first day of class, that is the bulk of your available points for this semester. So these are a 20-ish% of your grade, basically. Now, you have 2 options for your capstone project. The goal of the capstone project for Unit 1 is just to demonstrate your mastery of the modes and collections that we will have studied. So pentatonic and diatonic modes, the whole tone collection, and the octatonic collection, which we will get to in the next couple of weeks. Now, you may take one of 2 pathways to demonstrate this mastery. The first one is an analysis. Now, the challenge here is that you get to pick what piece you analyze. The reason I say that that's challenging is because A, you have to make sure that the piece significantly utilizes modes or collections in some way. So that might require some sort of digging on your end. But secondly, and this is the thing I want you to keep in mind, you have to be able to access a notated score or an accurate transcription of the piece. And most of these pieces that we're studying were composed in the 20th or 21st century. So that means that they are not public domain. So it's not like a Mozart piano sonata that you can just go on IMSLP and download. The vast majority of these pieces are not public domain. So you might have to get in communication with Khan Library, or if it's a piece that maybe your studio teacher has and would be willing to let you borrow and scan. But please don't break any laws to get your score for this project, or if you do, just don't tell me. So keep that in mind, that you may have to sort of be in contact and do a little legwork to get a score. Alternatively, if you want to do the analysis option, but you're stuck and you can't find a piece, there is one in the course packet that will work quite well. It's not one that we're going to do in class, and it is Scene 2 from a Rimsky-Korsakov opera. So if you go to page 51 in your course pack, it's a chunk. It's a lot, which is why I put it in the course pack, because I didn't want to make you guys print out that much score. But that will work really, really well for this capstone project. If you do choose to do this and you want to get a head start on the analysis portion of it, I would say watch the octatonicism lecture when it posts a little bit early. And I'll try and get that done this week so that you will have it, because that collection is in that excerpt. So that is an option for you. So if you choose the analysis, you're going to hand me an annotated score. So I want to see your score with all of your markings on it. I don't care if it's neat or not. That's not the point. I just want to see your markings, and you'll have seen enough of my annotated scores by then that you'll kind of know sort of what I'm looking for ish. Point 2, a roadmap. Now, if you had me for Theory 2, you are very familiar with roadmaps, and I'm assuming if you had Professor Allegant at any point during Theory 3, and I'm still not quite sure how Theory 3 worked with who you had for professors, but I know that he was involved in it, so if you had him, then you are familiar with roadmaps as well. Basically, in a nutshell, a roadmap is just a demonstration of your engagement with, interpretation with, process with the piece. It can come in any form. I have gotten artwork, I have gotten board games, I have gotten short films. It can be literally anything. I have gotten musical reinterpretations. So the only real rules I have for roadmaps are I have to be able to assess it in some way. So I know we're not physically with each other. I used to tell people, like, it's got to be able to fit in the room type of a thing. But I've got to be able to assess it. So if it's a visual piece of art, you've just got to be able to, like, take a picture or video of it and send it to me. And I have to say this because my very first semester, it did happen. Please don't break any rules or laws while you're doing this. Don't trespass or do anything like that. Or if you do, just don't tell me. So keep it classy while you are making your roadmap. Yeah, if you want examples of past roadmaps, I'm happy to share them with you. Just shoot me an email. I'll send you some links. so that you have a better idea. And then the third thing you'll hand in is just a short 1-page-ish reflection paper. And I think you guys did that in Theory 3, so you're familiar with that as well. Okay, so that's all for option 1, which is the analysis option. Option 2 is if you don't want to analyze someone else's work, you can just compose your own. Now, if you take this route, you'll be composing a piece that utilizes collections in some way. You don't have to use all of them, but I need to be able to see that you are demonstrating the fact that you understand them and understand how to manipulate them. You can model your composition off of the pieces that we have studied. So if you want to model it off of the girl with the flaxen hair or model it off of the peacock that we're going to do on Friday, whatever it is, you are welcome to do that. Or you can just try something new. It can be in any form, any orchestration. I just need to see and hear that you have some fluency and understanding of these collections. If you choose the composition, you're also going to turn in 3 things. One will be an annotated score of your composition. So you're going to print out the score or have it as a PDF and then actually annotate on it as if you were doing an analysis. So show me where the collections are, show me how you're modulating, where the phrase arcs are, that kind of thing. Number 2, you're also going to hand in a roadmap, a la also part 1, or in lieu of a roadmap, you can send me a performance recording. Now, I do mean like live humans recording it, not just letting Sibelius MIDI spit out the performance itself. Again, if that means that you have to involve more than one body, please don't break any rules for distancing and things to do this. But that performance recording can be a substitute or stand in lieu of a roadmap. And then you will also hand in a reflection paper talking about your experience creating, kind of your process of composing, and reflecting upon the work and your finished product. This is due at class time on the last day of the month, so Friday, February 26th. If Blackboard's being weird, there is an assignment link in Blackboard for it. If your stuff is too big, if the files are too big, just make a Google folder and share it with me, or email it to me. Either of those options are totally fine. This document is up on Blackboard. You can access it at any time. If you have questions in the meantime, please feel free to ask away. So now that we've got that out of the way, on tap for today, we're going to take a refresher listen to I2. Most of you submitted free writes for this, so I know most of you have heard it a couple times already. I'll kind of frame a couple of big picture things, and then you're going to split into breakout rooms with some prompts, and I'll explain that after we've listened. This recording is a newish one. It's a live performance that happened this fall. So I think a lot of people, if they did tell me what recording they listened to the Icy Simpson recording, which is the one that I knew the best as well. This is a live performance from the fall, and we're going to give this one a go. So grab your score if you've got it handy. I'll scroll it up here too. Let's give this a listen. Okay. So that recording, obviously, if you listen to the Icy Simpson one, you experienced a female voice with this piece. This was obviously a male voice, and I think there are some kind of significant interpretive differences in terms of, especially with the keyboardist and the vocalist as well. So that's something that you can maybe explore if you want to, either today or in your discussion response. A couple of ideas or kind of topical things that I want to send you off with before I shuttle you into breakout rooms. We obviously talked about modes on Monday in the video lecture, and most of you handed in a worksheet for that, and what I saw come in seemed like you all had a good grasp on it. So with that, looking at these opening, let's say like 10 measures-ish, if you had to take into account the key signature and the pitch that seems to be tonic, how would you describe the key slash the mode of this opening 10 measures or so? It's about here. Some of you mentioned it in your free writes, but how would you describe the key and mode of that opening passage? Yeah, Miriam.
D Aeolian.
Yeah, good. So we have a pretty clear D tonic that is asserted by a couple of things. We have this opening in the keyboard that kind of asserts that D minor triad. We get this here, this kind of 5-1-ish in the left hand, and this opening fifth in the voice. So a lot of things signaling that D is our tonic. But if we were going to sort of jump in and say, oh, it's D minor, we're missing a very important aspect of D minor. If you think about Theory 1 when you were learning how to part write in minor keys, the one thing that everyone seems to forget at one point or another is to raise the leading tone in your minor keys. And most of us, the 5 chord is the first thing we learn about. So if we were in regular old D minor, we'd be looking for C sharps. And not only do we not have C sharps, but this passage absolutely makes it impossible to ignore the fact that we have C naturals, because the C natural is so prevalent. It's prevalent in the vocal line, it's prevalent in the accompaniment itself. So there's really no kind of way of getting around the fact that we are definitely in D Aeolian. Now, there are lots of implications that choosing Aeolian over the kind of harmonic minor or the standard minor has for the sound, for the harmonies. Most importantly, you can't build a major quality dominant chord if you stay entirely in the Aeolian mode, right? Because if I'm only using C naturals, I can't build an A major triad. So what then do we have to do in order to have a kind of dominant? What is our harmonic polar opposite to the one chord? So that's something you can explore in your rooms if that sounds interesting to you. Another thought is this piece has kind of pockets of D Aeolian that are juxtaposed with really chromatic sections where all of a sudden you just get slapped in the face with a bunch of flats. And you have to kind of figure out what's going on as in terms of a tonal center and in terms of just like harmonically what's going on. But I want you to not forget about the text. The text is so critical to what's going on musically. A lot of you mentioned it in your free writes to one degree or another. The text is a poem by Langston Hughes, and actually quite a few of you were familiar with the poem. So keeping that in mind, I want you to also reflect upon and consider the music's relationship to the text, especially in terms of key centers and consonance and dissonance. That's going to be something that is really critical to how this piece plays out. Okay. With that, we are going to do something slightly different. in your breakout rooms. I'm sending you all in the chat a link to a document. Now, miraculously, this worked last group and everyone had access to it and could edit it. If you do not have access for whatever reason, just click on the little request access link and I'll check my email and give you access in the next minute or two. But when you open up this document, there are some prompts and there are the answers. There's a table underneath, and each breakout room has its own sort of spot to respond. You do not have to respond to every prompt. I would actually prefer it if some of you like jump to the last one, because what happened last class is everyone started with the first prompt and not everyone had enough time to get to the other ones. So you do not have to do all of them. You can spend your entire time on one if you want. That is absolutely fine. But you are all going to kind of jump in there. Everyone's in the same document, and I am just going to creep on the document itself. And while you're working, transfer your work onto one master score. So when we come back, we're going to have some time for discussion, and I'll have all of your commentary kind of on the score itself so that we can use that for discussion. We're going to approach breakout rooms the same way we did last time, which is I'm just going to let you all choose who you would like to work with. So the groups are going to be like 2 to 3 people a piece. And again, for whatever reason, some people are just not getting the prompt or the message to join a room. So I'll manually place you if you're not getting it. But rooms should be open now. So you are more than welcome to grab a buddy and go off and do your thing for the next like 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, so let's jump to the score. I tried to get the bulk of what you guys were putting in the Google Doc, and I have some notes in here too that I want us to talk about. Okay, so I'm going to start with this, what color is this? Orange comment right here. So a lot of you responded to this idea of Aeolian and kind of what it feels like and the lack of leading tone and the implications in terms of tension and all of that kind of stuff. I did ask at some point about a harmonic pole to the tonic, so something that's acting dominant like. And one group did comment about this idea of the subtonic, major 7, the C major chord, acting as a substitute for the 5 chord. And I am super into this idea, and I will tell you why. First off, the very opening, we sort of get plopped with this toggling between D minor and C major, and we see it over and over in these little motivic bits. And I think that that kind of sets us up. And I mentioned early on that not only do we not have C sharps in this opening modal passage, but Bonds is like hammering us with the C natural. So it's not just that we don't have a leading tone, it's that the natural scale degree 7 is just in our faces as a pitch and also as part of this C major harmony. Now, so the opening sort of kind of to me establishes C major as a possible dominant, but I'm going to bring us all the way to the very end. And next time you listen to this, as you're maybe getting your discussion response ready or what have you, I want you to listen to this very last bit because we end on that C natural. So by ending on scale degree 7 with it not being a leading tone 7, it creates this kind of, it feels like an I act to me. Like it's a very open kind of cadence. And honestly, to me, it feels like scale degree 5. So if you go and you listen to this and try and sing this last little phrase bit, to me, this feels like 5. That is the only way I could get it to make sense in my head and in my ear. That last note just felt like scale degree 5 to me. So this idea of the subtonic behaving as our substitute dominant, I think, is really, really rings true for me as I have listened to and learned this piece. Okay, so that was one comment that I wanted to jump on. Let's talk about what's going on in measure 9, because there was a group that had some really, really great comments about it. Started as like text music relationship and just kind of like kept going and getting better and better. So this idea of the opening being very, very consonant. There's one chromatic chord in the opening few measures, but it's very, very consonant. And then we get these A flats, and they turn our nice D minor triads into these D diminished triads. And in the text, this is when we start to kind of get the race implications of the text. The very first phrase, "I too sing America," it seems pretty innocuous. We've got no dissonances going on, but as the singer introduces this next idea, look what we have going on. The vocal line is going down, so we've got this downward contour that's starting to darken the sound. And then we also introduce these diminished triads. So we get all of these little things packed into this measure that, with the text, start to kind of darken the sound before we get really thrown into our first chromatic passage. I'm going to jump up to this harmony. Okay, quick mode brain teaser. We're in D Aeolian. We have a chord that has a lowered scale degree 2 and a lowered scale degree 5. If I was going to suggest that that chord is borrowed from another mode, what mode would that be?
Locrian.
Yeah, Kaylee. Yes.
Sorry.
I heard it. No, you're fine. So we have, just like in tonal music when we borrow chords from other keys, and you saw that probably a lot in Theory 3, where it was just like a borrowed chord. There's no other way to label it. We just stole it from this other key for a second because it sounded cool. We have borrowed this, this is arguably, to me, this is the best spot of the opening, is that harmony. And we've borrowed it from D Locrian. Now, not only that, but in order to borrow that chord, we've had to flatten 2 pitches. And this is a great foreshadowing of what goes on then here in measure 9. We bring back that A flat to turn our D minor triad into D diminished. And then we just go all out in the flats 2 measures later. So let's talk about this passage starting at measure 11, and I want to talk about it in 2 contexts. One is modally. So if you look at what we have going on, we get this nice fat D flat major triad. We've got D flat in the bass, so we're kind of sending the idea of D flat tonic here. D flat tonic with G naturals. So one group did mention this in the doc, and I was super happy to see it. This little tiny dip into D flat Lydian. And when I say tiny, I mean is short. We're there for like right here. And then the melody is still technically in that Lydian, but we get reintroduced to our C major on the downbeat of 13. And that pushes us kind of out of D flat Lydian and into whatever is coming next. But this tiny little plop into D flat Lydian, think about that key in terms of key signature. We've just thrown 4 flats at the music. And the reason that's important is that 4th flat, the D flat. Now, we made a big to-do, mostly I made a big to-do, about not having a C sharp in D Aeolian. And we never get it. We never get that leading tone. But we get slapped in the face with D flats. Every single time we enter a chromatic passage, we have D flats. So, yes, we don't get a C sharp, in the D Aeolian passages, but we certainly get it in these chromatic passages, only it comes to us in the form of a D flat. Now, I read a lot of the free writes, anything that came in before I went to bed last night. And a couple people did make this fantastic connection of the music and the text, and the D tonic passages being these moments where the text is kind of hopeful and looking to make a change. And all of these chromatic passages, especially these passages where our D turns into D flat, those are the conflict passages. So those chromatic, crunchy things going on that almost always involve the D flat. We can think of this piece as a battle between D natural and D flat. If we were to reduce it to like a simple idea, it is a battle between D natural and D flat in the music. And they just sort of duke it out over and over until the very end. And some of you, I saw one group made a really nice point about this return to the opening being kind of reflective sounding. So we start in D Aeolian, we round it out in D Aeolian. In the middle, there is this battle of wills, battle of key centers, and that D versus D flat kind of keeps coming back out at us. I do want to talk great ideas here about the rhythm and the articulation in this passage starting at 15, and this kind of like laughter with the staccato, the rhythm, the articulation sort of supporting the aggression almost in the text, this very kind of like assertiveness, I should say, in the text. And I want to point out too, I'm talking about this battle between D and D flat. Look at this great clash we get right here, where we just came off of D flats in the accompaniment, and right at this point, so this is the defiant moment in the text, right? Where the singer is saying, well, it doesn't matter that you're gonna make me eat in the kitchen. I'm not going to. I'm gonna eat well and grow strong. And right on that text with strong, there's our D natural all by itself. And I'll be totally honest, the first time I heard this and I wasn't paying attention to the score, I thought it was a wrong pitch, because it comes right off of that D flat. And I just thought the singer was sharp. That relationship, that cross relationship, sort of gets highlighted at this moment. And then we get this nice D minor chord underneath, and that sort of reestablishes us with D tonic. But this over the bar line 16 to 17 is one of my favorite parts of this song, because that D flat to D natural battle just sort of like hits right at that moment. A lot of you talked about this next passage. So let's break down these harmonies at 19, because they're really, really fun. So I'm going to play everything but the uppermost voice, and I just want you to think about what quality chord it sounds like. Don't worry about what it looks like on the page, but here's what it sounds like. So if I were to play that for you in aural skills and say, hey, what quality chord is that? You would most likely say it's dominant. It don't look like a dominant, though, on the page, right? It is D and A. And instead of F sharp, it's spelled as a G flat and then a C. But then what happens when we put that uppermost voice on there? There's our F natural. So we've got this incredible split third with this chord. So we get the major third and the minor third above the bass. And the F natural then does step down to E. And now I'm going to play beat 3. And again, without the uppermost voice to start. So you've got a G and a D. You've got an F and a B natural. This one actually is spelled the way it sounds. Nice G dominant. But I'm going to put the uppermost voice back on. Sharp 4 that resolves up to 5. So incredibly crunchy and jazzy things going on here. And I also want to highlight this kind of 5-1, or not kind of, this 5-1 motion in the bass, or that rising fourth. It feels like 5-1. It's not, I would say it's maybe not establishing a key anywhere, but it feels like 5-1. And then we do the same thing again in 25. We're just up a half step, right? So if I were to label this then, this guy, and I'll post my score as well up on Blackboard. This one is, it sounds like a D7 with, I think I actually do have it labeled as a D7 with a split third. I don't know if that's actual, like, technical notation. I have my own language on my scores. And this guy, G7 with a sharp 4. But the essence, I really don't care how you label them, if I'm being perfectly honest. The idea is that they're just highly dissonant. But then look at the melody, and I will let you go in 60 seconds. Look at the melody. If you were to take this melody and extract it from the piano, it's a beautiful, pure D Aeolian melody. You get that same open fifth that the piece started on. So the voice, the vocal line is fully D Aeolian, beautiful. You've got that little bit of rhythmic dissonance with the quarter note triplets above this incredibly dissonant, crunchy accompaniment. So what is going on there? Why the conflict right here? Why are we in conflict at this particular moment? That's something to think about for your discussion response. Okay, it is time to go. So I will post this. I had a couple other notes from you guys on here. I will post this score, and I'll post my score up on Blackboard. And I will keep the link to that document live. So you're very welcome to go back in there and read kind of reread what you guys wrote, what your group wrote, read what your colleagues wrote, as you're getting ready for your discussion response if you choose to do it. So for Friday, I will see you again on Friday. You may hand in a discussion response for this piece. You may also submit a free write for the Bartok. So we're listening to the Peacock on Friday. It's super cute, little short guy. So you can hand in a free write for that as well. If you got questions, let me know. I'm sorry I kept you 1 minute over. And I will see you guys on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, guys.